Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on how to use Sentinel values in Java programming. When you first encounter Sentinel values, the idea can be confusing. You want to use a Sentinel value to indicate that you're done entering input. Take a minute to look up what is the definition of a Sentinel value. You might have found a definition similar to this. In programming, a special value that is used to terminate a loop. The Sentinel value typically is chosen so that it is not a legitimate data value that the loop will encounter and attempt to use in its performance. For example, if you have a loop algorithm that uses all positive numbers, -1 would be a good Sentinel value, since you do not want to use -1 in your program. Another example would be if you're entering a list of names. You could use a string that would not normally be a name, such as done, end, quit. That way your program can search for those values. When it reads one of those values, it knows that the user is done entering valid names. Okay, let's take a look at an example. If we wanted to calculate the average test score of a series of test scores, we're hoping that nobody gets a negative value on their test. So we can use a -1 or a negative number to terminate the loop. Our loop might look something like this. While the score that the user entered is greater than or equal to 0, then I want to execute a block of code. So I have my curly brackets and I say total, which is my accumulating total of all the scores, plus equals, which is a shortcut for saying total equals total plus score. So I'm adding the score that the user entered to a running total. I add 1 to a variable called count so that I can in the end calculate the average. I ask the user to enter in the next test score and I tell them to enter a -1 to exit. I read in the next score that the user entered into the variable called score. If they enter in a valid value that is greater than or equal to 0, I go back through my loop again. Otherwise, if they entered a -1 or actually any negative value, the test, while score greater than or equal to 0, would be false. In that case, it would go out of my loop and it would stop asking the user to enter more scores. So in this example, -1 is the Sentinel value. Let's take a look at another example. This time, we expect the user to enter a list of names. So the names are going to be entered in as strings. So it wouldn't make sense to use -1 as a Sentinel value. Instead, it's easier if we use a string that would not normally be a name, such as the word done. So in our example, we have while name dot equals double quotes done double quotes not equal to true. What we're saying is that as long as the name variable is not equal to the word done, I'm going to go ahead and execute my loop. My loop says student name plus name, and then it says enter the next name or done to exit. We read in the next string from the user into the variable called name. It comes back up to the while statement and it checks again to see if what they entered is a name or the word done. In this example, done is the Sentinel value. Let's take a quick second here to make sure you notice that in the while statement, if you want to compare two strings, you want to compare the string the user entered, the variable name, to the string done, you have to use dot equals. You cannot say name equals equals double quotes done. Equals equals can be used to compare all primitive data types, but it cannot be used to compare two objects, and a string is stored in Java as an object. We will talk about that in later chapters, but just remember, if you're trying to compare two strings, you have to use dot equals. Okay, now it's your turn to try. I've given you two ideas for some programs. So let's take a look at the first one. What would you have to do to write a program that calculates the total cost of items in a grocery list? So ask the user to enter in the cost of each item. So maybe they're going to enter in the first item as $1.22. Then they're going to enter in the next item as 75 cents. They're going to keep entering in numbers, so you might want to ask them to use 0 as your Sentinel value. There won't be any items that cost $0.00. So your loop will continue until they enter 0. At the end, go ahead and print out the total of all the items that they entered as their grocery list. So go ahead and give that a try. Another program that you might want to try is a program that asks the user to enter a series of characters, and you're going to store them into a string variable. That way, when you print it back out, it'll be a complete sentence. So think about what would be a good Sentinel value for that type of program. What is a character value that the user would enter that normally would not appear in a sentence? If you said maybe a number or a digit, that's a great idea. So go ahead and write a program that asks the user to enter in a series of characters, one at a time, that will be put back together into a sentence, and tell them to enter a number as their Sentinel value to get out of the loop. Well, I really hope that this tutorial helped you understanding better how to use Sentinel values. If you have any additional questions, make sure you let me know, and also provide me any feedback you have on this tutorial. All right, well, good luck and have a great day.